What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Value Adds Value. My name's Kyle Krieger, joined by my guy, Wilkie V. Law the Third. Will, what's happening?
Not a lot, man. Excited, enjoying this time off. Um,
Yeah,
I'm really taking a brain dump and not doing anything school related at all.
yeah,
At all. Like nothing. No
same.
not looking at a learning plan, not looking at a lesson, not looking at anything. Nothing. Taking a
Mhm.
break.
Yeah, and you were just saying a little while ago too that you've taken a break from your doctorate, your dissertation, so that's been
That's been
good.
beautiful, man. It's crazy how when you're not putting in so much or not doing so much that your brain actually has a time to reboot. Like I say, like I told you,
Right.
I want to write now. I want to get into my research, but I'm just kind of like, just hold your horses, just wait,
Hmm.
wait, pace yourself. And like I say, I think we have to have this time. It's like the perfect time to be able to kind of reboot,
Hmm.
so to speak.
Absolutely. So we are super excited. So both of our
Yes.
guests today we've had on previously, and once we had one of them on, the other one came on, and then they were like, "We should come on together." So we're so thrilled to have Heather Cacioppo and Lauren Larsen back on the podcast to talk a little bit. Just, I mean, let's get started just on what your year's been like. So, ladies, thanks for taking some time to talk with us.
Of
Thanks
course,
for
thanks
having
for
us
having
again.
us. Yeah, seriously, so excited.
Yeah, so I think maybe just kind of starting with um, each of you, just a little bit of your background in case of people haven't listened to those prior episodes, just kind of your general job title, what you're doing and where you're at, and then we'll just kind of get into what the year's been like, and from there we'll just kind of take it as it is. So
Yeah, I'll start. I am Lauren Larsen. I am a K-6 behavior specialist interventionist at two public schools here in Phoenix, Arizona. Before that, though, I was in the classroom for a handful of years as a K-6 structured autism self-contained teacher. So I worked all kids on the autism spectrum, like all ability levels and all grades in the elementary school. So that's kind of my background.
And I'm Heather Cacioppo. I am a self-contained special education teacher in Illinois, and I've been teaching now for 7 years. This year, I am fully virtual for 11 students. And Lauren and I kind of became really close friends within the last year. Once COVID hit, we connected through Instagram and became really close from there.
yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of how that relationship developed, because I mean we've connected with so I love that your cat is back, Lauren. Oh,
Always.
always. Oh yeah. So but we'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because we see Instagram, and we feel like there are like those Instagram friends that are people you just connect with, but I'd love to hear how, because like you always love to hear that real relationships develop from the platform. So how did you guys, what's kind of the story that you got close?
So I don't know if Heather recalls it the same way I do, but we both were, but I was like, we both were presenters for educators to educators, and we were both doing it. And I am tech stupid, like I am horrible. And so actually, I hit Heather up and was like, "Hey, I need help." And we started talking because we were both presenters and that I was horrible. And she had to help me out way too much with all the tech stuff. And that's literally, I think, how our friendship blossomed was because I had to talk to her like every day for tech help. And we just realized we had so much in common. And we kind of had really similar goals, like moving forward in our businesses and stuff. And so we really connected on that platform. And we just like realized like we are really good friends and we talk every single day. I'm not kidding. I probably talk to her as much as I talk to my husband. And yeah, we've never met in person. Probably we were going to, but COVID this year and stuff. But yeah, Heather's that kind of the
I
gist.
would call it more of an accountability partner. I think
Yes.
we leaned on each other a
Right.
lot because it was our first time
Mhm.
presenting at a conference. So I think I would take some information from her and be like, okay, are you using a PowerPoint? Are you not using a PowerPoint? Are you just going to talk in front of a camera? And we would kind of bounce ideas off of each other. So I would call it more an accountability partner. It was a mutual relationship for sure that started. But then, yeah, I would agree. Our businesses were very similar starting points. She was starting to make a website. I was starting to make a website. And we went through building our websites together and all of that. So I was more of the tech savvy one because my husband works in information technology. So he was always, I know how to do this. We'll quickly do that. And then I would go and tell Lauren. We always joke that, I mean, at least in my household, I always joke that what I would do or what I would get, Lauren would get. So I got a spin bike. So now Lauren got a spin bike. So I think that's just traveled through our friendship, is, got to keep up with the Joneses, I guess.
Yeah,
Keep up with each other.
And I can say, at least from our perspective, and Will, you can kind of attest to this, the difference between the in-person presentation versus the virtual presentation it's so different. And granted, now that we've been virtually teaching and we've done, a half a dozen of those virtual presentations, but I remember our first couple, Will, we just talked to the camera. We didn't have we didn't have a PowerPoint. We were just like, we'll do it just like we do our podcast and see what happens. But then you see and I think the difficult part, especially with the virtual presentation, is not judging your presentation on some of the other people that are super tech savvy, that are doing that, because it's really, I mean, and I know from having watched both of your sessions, they're super good, and it's so easy to lose focus of the content you're presenting and get lost in I have to make it look a certain way and have these transitions. So
I think that's one of the worst mistakes I made. Before my actual presentation, I set in on other people's session. And so you get that kind of oh, wow, mine sucks so bad. And then the next time I was like, hey, let's do a PowerPoint. Let's kind of click through the slides and go through, or, let's add a video in here. Let's add this. And so you get, but, I think that's the beautiful thing about presenting, is that when you present and you attend, you gain so much that enhances you. So you're not just a regular participant, you're enhancing your presenting skills, also your craft, for when you go back into the classroom. So you kind of get it on both sides. So that's awesome how your friendship came from your ability, Lauren, or inability to navigate the tech space. And then, I mean, and for you guys not to have met face to face, that's huge. Like that. And the way that you all talk about each other, and when we interviewed each one of you, is you would swear up and down that y'all are besties that hang out all the time, and that's not the case. Wow.
Well, and she's got family that's like a town away from me, or family or friends or whatever. So I was like, wait, when you come travel, you can come see me too.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Her husband is from right by where I live too. So I was saying the same thing. I'm like, all right, well, maybe we should all just, you drive up, Heather, will you fly up, and we'll all meet in the Twin Cities and we'll have a good time. But I remember we must have been at the first time we went to Teach Your Heart Out. We were at Teach Your Heart Out, and one of the presenters was, we were there and we were engaged and talking, and she came up to us afterwards and was like, are you guys actually friends? Because she thought we were just two random people that met each other at the conference, and we're like, no, we're actually friends. So it's so strange to have that feeling of yeah, I really feel like I know this person. But even still, with the presenting piece, I still have that fear with our that presentation for me is our YouTube channel. We have so much content, and I'm so self-conscious about it. I'm so self-conscious about it that I have put so little of what we have, because I'm I watch other teachers' YouTube channels, and I'm like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And you hear them talk oh, I spent 4 hours on this one 4-minute video clip, and I'm like, I don't know how to do that, but we're learning. We're growing in that regard. So do we want to kind of just get a catch up update on how things have gone since we talked with both of you in the fall? I guess maybe start with you, Lauren, because you were discussing a little bit of the back and forth that you've been through with your school.
Yeah, so for us, like I said, I teach at 2 elementary schools. So I service all of the students in their school with their social emotional needs. And we started off virtual and then we went back in person, which lasted probably about a month and a half. And then we went back virtual. And it's just been kind of a roller coaster for us. We had a lot of COVID cases amongst our students, and they just kind of pulled the plug around Thanksgiving to send us back virtual. And in January, we're going back virtual. And it kind of has been met here with a lot of big emotions from parents and stuff that were just very unhappy. It caused our superintendent to quit because they were like stalking him and our governing board and harassing him and his family, and his kids were getting beat up at school. And just really, parents have some really big emotions about it, and it hasn't helped the state of our schools. And so it's been really hard just to kind of ping pong back and forth. Our kids have a lot of anxiety about just the instability of it. And it's just kind of been a roller coaster since I talked to you guys last.
So, like, I mean, I've heard of stories like that where, there was a story out of a small town in Kansas where a mayor resigned because people were threatening over a mask mandate or hey, if you're in stores, wear a mask. But so like I just can't understand how people think that that's an acceptable way to handle yourself in that situation, that a superintendent had to resign. But did that, did that really change anything when the superintendent resigned? Because someone else just probably stepped in.
Yeah, so our old superintendent, who retired actually last year, who had been our superintendent for over a decade, he actually came back interim to take over. And the funny thing is they really did this, at least parents did this, hoping our schools would go back in person. And our old superintendent came back and said, nope, we're still staying virtual and we're going to do what's best. So it's just really sad because, obviously you have these thoughts and opinions, but to do that in front of your children and to show that kind of not being a role model in that regard and stuff, that was, I think, the really hard part. Because we had students who, like I have students who some of those families were my students and families. And we'd have to talk to those students about how their parents are behaving, and it's causing a lot of emotion from them and stuff. And so it's really hard because these parents' actions are affecting our students, and they already are going through so much. And now they have all of this that's coming from the home setting into the school setting with these big views that aren't even theirs and big emotions that aren't theirs and stuff. So it's been really hard.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah, it's been as a teacher too, just like the instability of all of it and stuff, and the unknown is just also kind of unsettling and stuff. And also you just have our superintendent who was new this year. Obviously he came in a pandemic. He did his best. He was amazing, and he just got, his family was just getting death threats and stalked, and they had to have security outside of his house and leaving signs outside of his house that were so nasty and stuff. And just to think that people are doing this to other people in such a time of crisis and stuff, just, it's so heartbreaking.
Do you think the situation would have been the same if your superintendent was there maybe a year later? Like the trust would be there with parents, or do you think it was just everything?
I think honestly, just we have these parents who are just very entitled, and they just feel like they are that's their belief, and they're just going to speak it how they speak it. I think honestly it would have happened to our old superintendent too. I just think people just feel like they have these rights right now and these big emotions and thoughts to project, and it's just so sad how people take it out.
So what about you, Heather?
I would say it's very similar, not to that extreme at all, but I would say parents have very big emotions. I feel like our district has divided in that regard. Either the parents really want them in person or they really want them virtual. And they don't want this like hybrid, half online, half in person. just because it's unstable for parents, for childcare. It's unstable for the kids, A day, B day, whatever. So I'm a virtual teacher all year. I agreed to that, and my students have stayed with me. I don't think anybody's going to be leaving at the semester, but parents have the choice if they would like to switch their child to virtual or in person at the semester, which is in, I think, like 2 weeks. So, but yeah, I've been virtual, so nothing's really changed a whole lot for me, except for the fact that they said that this virtual academy that I'm in would be a separate entity for what's happening in person. And it's not. So their schedules have to align with what's in person. So originally, the district had told parents of the virtual academy and the teachers of virtual academy that we would be 9 to 1:30. That was our time. It's a little bit of a shortened day, a lot more asynchronous work, things like that, more time for teachers to check in with the students, because there would be 8 to 9 and then 1:30 to 3. The teachers can check in a little bit more, because the teacher school day would still be 8 to 3. But we have to align with what in-person is doing, because they have to meet up with, I think it's like band and social studies or something like that, that the teachers are doing both. They're doing virtual and in person, because there wasn't enough band teachers to go around, or social studies teachers to go around to separate them, I guess. So anytime that the in-person students are there, we are 8 to 3:30 on the computer all day long. And we have a Wednesday asynchronous day. So they don't have to be online. The kids can do independent work. Teachers will do their check-ins those days. But when they are hybrid or they are virtual, not hybrid, they're virtual, then we move back to that 9 to 1:30 schedule. So we've been doing a lot of back and forth from the time change, for like extending the day and then shortening the day and then extending the day and shortening the day. And then on the Wednesdays, when we don't have school, that's so confusing for my kids, because they need that routine and they need that consistency, that they're like, wait, where's my teacher? I don't know what to do. So I'm mostly online on Wednesdays anyways.
Just to give them that consistency.
Exactly. So,
And, I think that's one thing that's being taken for granted, is the idea that school provides students with that consistent schedule. We were talking with, I think it was Principal Ra, and when he said that we're asking our students to develop a schedule, a daily schedule of how they're going to learn, what classes they're going to do, how they're going to do the work, how they're going to complete the work, how they're going to navigate each one of these classes. And we're asking this as young as elementary school. When we have seniors who graduate high school who can't navigate that properly, they still need a schedule. You still have a scheduling counselor who walks you through the process of making sure your schedules, you can get from one end of the campus to the other end of the campus, or whatever it may be. But we're asking our kids to do this now. And I can only imagine with your population, both of you all's population, how much more compounded that is, for that population, because they thrive in those environments where you have that consistent structure, and now it's kind of almost like freelancing.
mm-hmm. And predictability. They know what's coming next. They know what activity they need to go to, because it's routine. It's consistent, like you said. And when it's not that way, I'm telling the kids every day when we log off, okay, you have to go and do this assignment. I'm being more direct with it versus, okay, go do your homework or do your asynchronous work. It's, you have to go into the Google Classroom, and I'm sharing my screen, doing all that fun stuff, and saying, you need to work on this assignment today. It needs to be submitted today. And you're right. It's difficult for even high schoolers to do that, let alone elementary and middle school.
Well,
Go ahead, Kyle.
Oh, I was just going to say, as a person, and Will could attest to this, that I'm a very free flowing, I don't do structure well. I struggled with this when I was in person and I had a schedule, giving my kids consistent routines. And there's 100% a difference between hey, you're doing the same notes and worksheet every single day and doing that stuff and having a routine of expectations. So I guess the question I would ask the two of you, especially in this situation, is how do you prioritize that routine, or how do you try to make that routine when things are so in flux? Because I mean, I have my regular ed kids that are struggling with the routine aspect of it.
Well, I was going to jump in and say, I think a lot of it too, sadly, falls back on these parents, especially in my realm, like K6 and stuff. Like some of these K3s, K2s, like they can't do half the stuff by themselves or be independent or keep themselves on a schedule, a routine, a checklist. Like, so it's a lot of, I feel like I've been working in my role as like the behavior specialist with families, like parents, like to help parents navigate these routines and set up these boundaries and systems and settings and stuff like that. Because things that come so naturally to us as teachers of like, don't put them in a room with all these distractions. Like, don't let them have their cell phone. Like, just like the basics, like put snacks in their room and water and stuff. Because I have parents who are calling me or reaching out that are so flustered and so stressed and stuff because they don't even know how to do this and set their kids up for success in these basics of routines. So I've been working with families on just like the very basics and actually instilling this stuff into families to help their students, because some of these students are getting one over on their families and the families have no idea until the teachers, and it's causing so much conflict and just there's so many people involved now, and it's really going back a lot on families. So that's kind of the hard thing, is we have to almost instill this in parents, not only students, to help get this going.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line. Because I am virtual, I'm working so closely with parents. They're right behind the kid or right next to the kid or nearby. And I'm trying to find that balance of, I'm not telling you how to parent, but I'm telling you something that might help your kid that I've seen. They're sitting in their bedroom, like you said, with all their toys behind them. And so all of a sudden there's a pile of toys next to the kid, and you walk in the room going, are the toys that have always been here? And I'm like, well, it is his room. So yeah. And I don't want to overstep and say, well, put your toys away, because is that my job? I don't know. And there's that really, really, really fine line going, well, it wasn't super distracting. Like it was just by him, it's not like he's shoving it in the computer or anything. So yeah, I would agree. I think working closely with parents to help provide them some ideas or supports or things that may help their child at home with routine or schedule, or like you said, having snacks nearby, I think has really helped.
I can't tell you the number of parents, and I have 8th graders and I've been working with 6th and 7th too. The number of parents who have said to us as a staff, well, the kid is just on his cell phone all day and I can't get them to focus on their work. And you have to bite your tongue not to say, then just take their phone from them.
Who pays the bill?
But I am flabbergasted at how many parents won't do something like that. And I'm not saying like there's a generation of like bad parents, because I've learned, having 2 sisters who each have kids and my wife and I do not, that I don't give parenting advice. I'm not gonna tiptoe. I don't want to say like you should parent when I don't have any kids.
I agree. That's where I'm at too.
It's just those things where you sit here and say, and it's such a delicate line, because we've had parents that you give them a suggestion and they get super defensive. You have the parents that say, it's not your job to parent my kid. Mm-hmm. So I just really, and Will, maybe you could speak to this about what it's been like to have a 15-year-old during this time.
Well, I'll say this. My daughter's exact words to me were, Daddy, I am much better face-to-face than I am virtual. She struggled, even though my wife and I both gave her a schedule. We sat down with her and said, okay, on Mondays and Tuesdays, let's focus on Mondays and Wednesdays, we're going to focus on these classes. Tuesdays and Thursdays, focus on these classes. Friday, you catch up. There was still situations where she got behind and she struggled. I had to have conversations with some of the teachers because I thought it was an abnormal amount of work that they were asking kids to do. You asking a kid in every class to do an hour worth of work every single day for every single class, you know, that's alone is 8 hours worth of work, you know, times 5 days a week. That's almost incomprehensible, um, an incomprehensible expectation for kids. And most of them didn't dial it back, you know. And so again, I think I, for me, I use my experience as a parent through this to talk to my parents. Like when my kids are absent and I know they're going to be absent, I'm on the phone with their parents saying, hey, your kid's going to be out. This is all I need them to do so that they can keep up. I don't want them to do everything that we're doing in the classroom, because that's just ludicrous. Because a lot of the stuff in the classroom, I put stuff in my lesson because they want more things in there for the kids to have options. Well, I may sit in the class and teach the lesson and say, okay, we're only going to focus on this right now. Or I may give a quick check and say, okay, we're not going to move on to this. We're going to stay here. And I may go through it. It may look like a lot of work on paper, but we're not doing all of that. You know, so it's just a matter of telling the parents, look, I don't want your kids sitting in front of the computer for 8 hours a day. I do not. I don't want to sit in front of the computer for 8 hours a day. So we have to figure out that balance between what's enough work and what's too much work. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think because again, this is only, we can't count the crisis learning that we did from March to May. I only look at from August to now. And I think that when we look at that, we started out overloading. I know on my campus, then we drew it back a whole lot. Mm-hmm. I think after the first 3 weeks of that, I was like, I'm not giving all my kids that work. That's just, mm-hmm. I put myself as a sixth grader, and I hated the sixth grade. There's no way in the world I'm going to sit for a class that I hate and do this much work. It's not going to happen. You know, so I do things like, I'm going to show you a motivational video and ask you to write something about it. You know, and that's your assignment. I take a grade for that. Well, how are you giving them a math grade for something? Because it's not about math right now. It's about them understanding the components that's going to make them a good human. You know, and even some of the teachers who are on my team who teach SPED, they come to me and they're asking me questions. I'm like, I don't think you should give them that much work online. Your expectation should not be that they're going to complete 8 or 9 assignments in a week. They wouldn't do that in your classroom. Is that 2 or are you saying up
2? I right now, my school started with when we were doing like the hybrid, and not we started out hybrid. Now we're all virtual. We were doing 4 assignments a week. Now that we're all virtual, at least for the time being, I'm doing 2 assignments a week. So when my kids have their asynchronous day, that's when they get their assignment. And then on our live meeting days, we kind of talk about it and we kind of have fun and I let things go sideways, because this is like the only group time that they're getting. And I didn't mean to interrupt you with that, Will, but a question I do want to ask is, I know that there have been times on my campus, and I've heard from a lot of teachers that there's been conflict and resentment from the teachers who are not the teachers who are not giving all the assignments, but the teachers who are like really going above and beyond and giving a ton of assignments. There's a lot of resentment that not everyone is doing that. And I wonder if that's something you've seen.
Well, I can jump into that because this is a conversation I have frequently, because obviously I'm not in the classroom, but I'm supporting every single teacher at 2 schools, which is a lot. There's, God, probably 100 teachers I work with. And I hear it all the time from a handful of teachers, and they're straight up like, it makes me upset because the standard is not there. Like across the board, what some teachers are doing is not what other teachers are doing. And some feel like they're working harder, while others are slacking, or like some are doing the bare minimum of what they need to do. And others are like exceeding and stuff. And for us, we, at one of my schools, the district did not put out we're a big district. They did not put out like a specific plan of like, this is the schedule. So I have one school on one schedule and one school on a completely different schedule. And even between the fact that 2 schools are on 2 different schedules, where one school teaches till 2:30 every day and one school's done at 12:30, imagine being those teachers in district who are hearing of other schools. You're only working till 12:30 and then you have the whole afternoon to just do office hours or like small group time, but we're working till 2:30. It's a nightmare. Like teachers across the board, with just like the lack of an expectation and a standard, it's creating so much animosity amongst teachers.
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit different for me because I'm home. I don't have that comparison. I don't see what other teachers are doing and I don't know what other teachers are doing. But I'm sure it's there. And I think right now the frustration with teachers is like the administration is what they're frustrated with because of the changing schedules and things like that. But I know I have some parents for the requirement for us is 2.5 hours online that we have to be present and 2.5 hours that they have to do on their own. So, which is a lot for our kids to do 2.5 hours of work by themselves. So that you have to consider that's their elective. So they have art or music that they have to do work for. They have PE. They have their related service like OT, PT, speech, and then work for me. So I think at the beginning, a lot of the parents were giving a lot of pushback because it was more on them. Because they had to get their child to do that activities or do those works, and things aren't getting turned in. And what I'm seeing now that we're almost a semester in is parents are just shutting down. The work isn't getting done. The students aren't doing the work. They're not motivated, and they're also online for 2.5 hours almost straight during the day because we're front loaded, so that they have the afternoon to do their asynchronous work. So I wouldn't say I'm getting a lot of that teacher pushback. It's going to be more from the parents right now. But like I said, I know my situation is way different and I don't see pretty much what anybody else does.
Yeah. And I know from my perspective, the social studies team I work with, there's a 6th grade, a 7th grade, and I'm the 8th grade, the 3 of us. And our administration came out and said, when you're doing a video or a lecture, if you're hybrid, 20 minutes of lecture with no more than 20 minutes of additional assignment. And we said, bet, we are going to stick to this. If I went over in a lesson video, if I went to 30 minutes, I cut it up into 2 videos and I gave it across 2 days. And our department, we've been stalwart on that, and we have had really good assignment turn in. We've had really good participation for kids because we have said we are going to give them a manageable amount of work. I do have those times where I feel like, man, I really should be doing more. Like I really should be pushing more, but for what? And it comes then to a question that we wanted to ask the 2 of you is, we know that the kids there's drama at home. It could be Lauren's situation, or it could be a parent that's working 2 or 3 jobs and they're not around. Mm-hmm. There's stress of not having a schedule. There's stress of all the online stuff, not getting socialization. And then you top it all off that a lot of kids are getting services. So the question I guess I would ask, and maybe it's kind of broad, but like, how do you prioritize like the services and the supports that you give students? Because I think for me, that's the hardest question I have in my heart right now going back is like, there's a part of me that's like, I don't care about social studies right now. It's so unimportant. World cultures is totally unimportant right now. And I know that I still got to do it, but I guess that's maybe even just a question for me is like, how do you prioritize when you know you got stuff you got to do, but you have all these other things on the other hand?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think there's like a one right answer to this and stuff. Like when parents come to me or teachers come to me and with a similar scenario question and stuff, and I'm like, we need to do what's best for kids. And if this kid cannot keep up and do all of these assignments, then we need to do quality over quantity and stuff. Like we need to meet them, like I think where they're at socially, emotionally, academically, and make sure they're successful and stuff. And I tell parents this all the time when they're literally, I have parents calling me crying and they're like, I literally am at the point where I can't fight with my child anymore because it's affecting my household. Like it's affecting our relationship. Like, what do I do? And I said, at this point, you don't force it. Like, you need to do what's best for your child and your family and your relationship with your child, and we'll get there. Like, we need to, if we're not able to do that, then we have bigger fish to fry. Like, we need to work on coping skills and emotional regulation, and we need to like get them to be successful with a very little amount and then build off of it. Like, if we are asking them to reach for the moon, like, we got to make sure that there's a really freaking tall ladder if they can't reach there and stuff like that. So I don't know, for me, every day is different when I talk to families on this topic, because it's like we have to meet their basic needs, and we have to go back to what's going to get them to be successful. We don't want kids to hate school, especially right now when things are so terrible in the world and stuff like that. We want them to feel like school's a safe place and teachers are a good person to go to if they need help and stuff, and their families, that they can rely on their families. And it's not just this constant battle of another person telling them like all of the stuff they need to do and causing conflict in their household and stuff. So I don't know, for me, it might not be the right answer, but that's what I tell parents.
Wilkie, do you have something you wanted to say?
No.
Oh,
I was
okay.
going to ask another question, but you can go ahead if you're going to address it.
So I would totally agree with everything that Lauren just said. You got to work with the parents, you got to work with the kids, figure out what's more important right now. And I would say their social emotional well-being and their coping skills and everything. It's such a different world right now. It's such a different situation that we're in. And we really need to consider what's best. You know, yes, school is important and it should be a safe place, like Lauren said. But if your child is having huge meltdowns and not eating, not sleeping because they're so stressed, so anxious, whatever it is, like, you need to be working with parents, you need to be working with teachers, social workers, anybody that can get involved and help the situation. I know I have a family that they said, well, we thought virtual learning would be so different, so we just can't handle that. We don't have the time. We don't have, like, we're both working. We can't be there to support the kid. So I've come up with a plan that he just pops on once a week. Once a week, I just need to say hi. How you doing? They can be with friends. It's not stressful at all. You know, just pop on and say hi. That's all I need. Yeah, I even have another student whose brother, who is in high school, is helping support him through this virtual learning. And mom's working overnight, so she's sleeping during the day. Dad's not around. So the older brother has been the one primarily helping this kid with the school. And he's nonverbal as well. So it's a whole situation. Again, like, you do what you can. You know, email me if you need anything. I'm here. I will keep checking in on you guys. But obviously that's not a priority for you right now, and I'm okay with that.
You know, let me ask this question. Are either of you guys' state still doing state testing this year?
I was like, to be honest, I'm not sure. They haven't come out and said we're prepping like we are going to, but they haven't officially said one way or the other for us.
Same.
Yeah, they brought people in during the fall to do like the fall testing, but it was like, if parents wanted to send their child in for testing, then they could. But I don't think it was required. And then I was just told the week before break that I needed to recertify to assess the state test this year. So over the break, I did have to take the certification because it's due, of course, like the 5th of January. So I had to do that. And then I'm getting mixed signals if we're truly following through with that, or if that was just to keep up with the certification of it.
Yeah, I know we are. I have mixed emotions about it. Very, very mixed emotions, and I'll share it, and then I'll get your take on it. I believe that we should state test. Now, that does not mean that I agree with state testing and standardized testing, but since that is the metric that we use, I think we should. Just like I'm still getting evaluated this year through the pandemic. I still get evaluated. I still get scored. They still look for those keystones that I should be doing in my classroom, and I feel we should be doing the exact same thing for our kids. Now, again, my little disclaimer at the bottom is I don't agree with standardized testing, period. I think we should throw that whole machine away and find a new way to assess our kids' abilities to attain and to articulate the learning that they've done. But since that is our metric, I believe that we should go ahead and do it, if for nothing more to show the machine, the operators, what's going wrong in this state. Because right now, our standards, our passing rate is always low on our state test. When you look at it as, from a global positioning, it's like, how can you say that achieving 38 or 40% of the knowledge is passing, on a state assessment? Like, that doesn't make sense. Where else can you learn 40% of the information and they consider that to be good? I don't want a doctor who made 40% operating on me, so why would we want to move a kid on? So I'm curious to see, what do you all think about that? Like, as far as how that would look for state testing, are you for it, or you think throw it out the window?
I mean, for me, I can speak. I'm kind of like you in the sense of I'm a very anti-state testing kind of person in general and stuff. But for me, when teachers are stressed and they're prepping for this and we're talking about it and people have a lot of big emotions about it and stuff, and I kind of chalk it up to, well, I mean, if we have to give it, we have to give it, and let's at least show that it's not like we're not meeting the kids' needs in the sense of academics in this world, in this realm of COVID teaching and stuff like that. And that'll be proof. Like, I feel like it will be a big indicator. I feel like if we have a ton of kids, and I mean, your success rates sound really low on your end, like the schools I'm at just happen to be very upper middle class or very high class and stuff like that, socioeconomic. So my kids, like, they do pass and stuff. Like, we have a lot of passing kids and stuff. So it'd be very interesting to see if those kids who for the last 4 years have been passing and exceeding these tests aren't anymore and stuff. And so it'd be interesting, not that I'm for giving the state test, I could care less. It does, I don't give the state test, doesn't affect me any in my role and stuff. But at this point, I want to almost be like, let's see what it looks like. Like, let's see how they do. Like, let's see if there's actually data showing the kids are not learning at the capacity that they were learning, or that this is really actually affecting students. And we have a lot more bigger issues and stuff like that. So I don't know, it's kind of my take.
Yeah, I completely agree. It doesn't affect me a whole lot. And I know special ed testing is very different than standardized state testing. Not that special ed testing is not standardized, but I know there's a lot more accommodations and supports. And I don't want to say teachers are giving students answers, but I know there's more supports when students are answering state tests. Again, I'm not saying anything's fishy going on, but I know all of us are trained a little bit differently on how to give a standardized test to a special ed student. So I think I agree. I think seeing the data would be very interesting. I guess my point where I don't agree is I don't think it should be required. If the families or the teachers are seeing that their child is severely struggling this year and just can't even keep their head above water, why put that other added stress on them? I think that goes back to prioritizing what is best for this kid. So I think that's where my.
Well, and I love that point of, and I totally see Lauren's point too, of like, let's show people what's actually really going on. Cause I thought too to myself, like, there are going to be some bright spots. Like, you're going to start to see that there are certain things that we're doing that are working well. But for me, the worry that I have, and when I started in Houston with Will, there was a STAR test. No, sorry, it was called TAX. It was called TAX, and most of the tests, the kids had like 90 to 95% passing rate, and then all of a sudden they changed the STAR, and the passing rates plummeted.
Well, the passing rate stayed pretty 85 to 90 something percent. But what happened is the passing, what was the word I'm looking for?
Standards.
The passing standard was lowered. It was lowered. So where it was 60 something percent, it got lowered. And I think in 6th grade math, we had one of the lowest numbers at like 35%.
Yeah,
40%.
the eighth grade social studies was like 44%. But the thing that worries me about Texas is in this new run of STAR tests, they put in end of course tests. for high school kids to get credit. And there's a spot where I'm like, you can't tell me, because kids had to pass those tests to get their course credit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with me. Like my evaluation system is tied to our school's test scores. Now, we didn't do the state testing in the spring, so all of the money just kind of went into a pool and it was divvied up between all the teachers that would have gone. But I know there are teachers around that their scores are tied to that state testing. So, and there are teacher evals that are tied to it. So I think what everybody said is totally valid, and it seems to epitomize this situation that there is no right answer to it.
Right.
And it's easy to jump to the conclusion that we should just cancel it. It's super easy, but I mean, for me, I'm just thinking about what you said, Heather, of just starting to talk to my kids about it and be like, hey, you might not do as good as you expect. And you don't have to like freak out. I mean, how long ago was it, Will, that we started, we tried to do a PD with the new teachers about how to prepare kids for a standardized test?
That was what, 5 years ago?
Yeah. And how do you talk to your kids about just how to, I mean, because the two of you can attest that kids freak out and they can't even function or think. And that's everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like so now that we live in Minnesota, I had to take a 40-question online test to get my new driver's license. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, taking a driving test, like, I'm going to fail this test and I'm not going to get a driver's license. And I can't imagine when you're sitting here saying, I'm a student who has been back and forth for a year. I have no consistency. I've had 17 different teachers. And now you expect me to just sit down and take this test. That just kind of makes me feel like one of the things I want to start doing with my kids is not prepping them to content take the test, but prepping them to just be able to handle the mental stress. Like, let's take some deep breaths. Let's chill out in this whole thing. And I think, that's one thing that I think a lot of, I wish I would start doing more, is like, hey kids, let's just all take a couple of deep breaths and let's just kind of, and to be honest, I don't do it in my real life.
But it's funny. I said the other day that I think that one of the best things that has come out of COVID for education, besides the innovation to push education further and beyond the four walls of the school, but also that component of consistently including social emotional learning. I think that we've gotten away from that because we've become so content. SEL is not, they're not going to test a kid on the SEL, but the SEL will determine whether or not that kid becomes a functional human. So it's like, how do you negate that in lieu of content when, I'm sorry, my daughter said it best. She said, Daddy, when I'm 40 years old, am I really going to need to know how to solve a quadratic equation? I say, not unless you're an engineer, an architect, or you're teaching mathematics. That's a reality. And so what we need to focus on, and what schools are not, well, I say a lot more doing it now because of trying to combat the PTSD that will come out of this. Can't say might, that will come out of kids being isolated, of kids, one of my kids said the other day, Mr. I just want to hug everybody because I'm a hugger and I haven't hugged anybody besides my mom and dad in months. And I'm sitting there like, I'm a hugger, and my teacher friends know that that's one of the things that I do. I love to hug, and to not have that and not be able to experience that exchange, that transfer of energy from one to another, that is huge. And if we don't teach kids how to navigate that or how to find alternatives, then, we're setting ourselves up to, if you think it's bad now, then just wait and see what happens when we get into, 2022, 2023, when these kids are older and they're now trying to navigate in a so-called normal manner post-COVID. I mean, we're scary.
I remember the moment. So Will came up to our wedding. He was our best man, and he came to my house right before we were going to rehearsal. And my wife was like, "Is Will gonna hug me?" And I was like, "Yeah, he's gonna hug you." But you have that moment in your mind where you're like, "Oh my God, I shouldn't be hugging people. I should not be hugging people. I shouldn't be hugging people." But you do. And thankfully for us, our wedding was not a super spreader. No one had COVID, no one got COVID. But for 2 weeks after my wedding, I had stress about, oh my God, like my grandparents were there, my parents, my in-laws were there. It's just like, man, and you think about what our kids are gonna have that. Like there are gonna be kids. I will say with the vaccines coming out, I am hopeful that I'll be back in a classroom in the fall. I actually, for the first time, really have hope. But there are going to be kids that when they come back in the fall are going to have stress level 47.
Mm-hmm.
And just already starting to think about how do we start to combat that? How do we start to and one thing Wilkie and I have been talking about as we've ended the year is like really trying to think big picture and start to ask like some bigger questions. And that's a question that I think is probably going to be a through line of the podcast this whole year is how do we try to anticipate and mitigate those stresses that kids are going to have? And like Will, you said, it's not going to magically change when we go back. It just isn't.
Yeah, we have to restart over making school a safe place.
Almost like teaching kindergarten again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with those parents dropping the kids off and the kids just bawling because they're afraid of going into the classroom. I mean, it's going to happen, but it's going to be different kids at each level that's going to have that experience.
I mean, just thinking about trying to have spots in my classroom where kids who don't want to sit next to anyone can sit. And just teaching middle school, I'm thinking about myself, okay, now you have the kid who doesn't want to be touched and everybody knows they don't want to be touched. So then they get hassled the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't stop thinking about that situation at your school, Lauren, and little kids beating up other little kids because their parents.
I know, it's so terrible. And I was going to say, just kind of to piggyback off of all of this, is a lot of things I work on with students in my role. And I obviously am an SEL specialist. So it's kind of the beauty of my role is I have the ability to do so. But honestly, I talk to kids who have these really big emotions about everything we're talking about, these big stresses, I'm like, Will, I want to hug people, like I can't, and stuff like that. Just have so much anxiety about certain things that just as a human, we just naturally do or want to do and stuff. And a lot of kids are at the point when I talk to them and they have these really big emotions and they're breaking down and they just are like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, honestly, like there's nothing wrong if you want to hug people. I mean, yes, in this world, it seems wrong, but there's nothing wrong. But like these kids now have this almost like idea that these natural things that we do to show love and affection are wrong. And they feel really bad about having these feelings about wanting to do stuff like that with their friends or their cousins or stuff like that. And I have to remind kids, like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to be like that. It's okay. But they think now there's something wrong with them. And it breaks my heart. And another thing too, is kind of on the isolation factor and stuff is like Will was saying, like, what's it going to look like in 2 years and stuff? Like I have so many kids who literally, they come to my office hours. Like I started hosting office hours just to play online checkers with kids, like just to talk to kids because they're so alone and they feel so alone and they're struggling and they are so sad. And it literally breaks my heart when I have kids emailing me and I don't have enough spots in my office hours to like play online checkers with people or just to talk and see their dog or something like that. It's heartbreaking. Like they just want to show someone their new move that they would have showed them on the playground, but we don't have playground time anymore. So they can't show them their cartwheels. So they're taking their computer outside and watching kids do cartwheels in their backyard because they just want to show someone something. And I'm now that person and stuff. And it's heartbreaking. It literally breaks my heart.
Yeah, I do the exact same thing. There's a couple times during the week where I'm like, I can tell these kids just want to talk. They just want to show off their toys, or their dog, or what they ate for lunch, or whatever it is. And like, we do. And there's a part of me that feels bad to do that. And that's so terrible. But like, I think teachers are now kind of forced to do the content all the time. You know, we have less time in the day, there's more stress going on. We need to make sure these kids keep up with the content, the content, the content. And there's some times where I just sit there with the parents and the students and I say, we're going to talk for the next 30 minutes. Whatever you want to tell me, whatever you want to share with the class, we're going to do it. You know, you want to show me your dog, you want to show me your cat, you want to show me whatever, I'm here. You know, we're not going to do math today. This is what we're doing instead. And I almost feel like parents are judging because they're like, wait, this is math time. Why are you doing? And they're not, but it seems, I almost feel bad about it. Like I do. And I'm like, is this really more important right now? Yes, it definitely is. I need to take more time to do that. And there's a time on my Fridays, and I don't want it to seem like a reward. Like, we're going to have this free time where we'll play games or we'll do hidden pictures on highlights or whatever it is. But that interaction that students aren't getting anymore with their friends or their peers, they're getting their siblings and their parents. That's all they really got. So the time that we have online, it's something, you know. So I'm trying to find creative escape rooms or something else to do where we have to work cooperatively, where it's more fun, it's leisure, it's a play date, whatever you want to call it. But the students are definitely missing that interaction with their friends.
Mm. Oh, I could sit here with the two of you the whole day and not do anything else. But we know that both you have commitments, so I think there's just so much more that I want to dive in with you guys on. So
I'm available if you want to keep going.
I know. I think
and go ahead.
Oh, no, you go.
No, I was just gonna say that I think we're talking about something that, and we really didn't touch on it a lot, but I want us to really, our listeners, I want them to understand that for every teacher who's teaching a gen ed teacher, who's teaching and virtually, and they feel like they're struggling with their kids, to understand that our special pops is that times 100. And I don't know if our policymakers are not seeing that. You know, they were already underserved in the classroom. And now you have a population of teachers who are going, regular teachers are going above and beyond. Our SPED teachers have to go from infinity and beyond. You know, they really got to Buzz Lightyear that thing to Mars really fast because just of the nature of what they have to do to accommodate their kids. And, you know, I hope our listeners from this just, if nothing more, get some type of support to know that you're not alone in this. Know that there are places where you can express yourself, you can use your voice. You know, one of the things that we have to start doing, and a friend of mine told me this the other day, is that when we have conversations like this, tag the education department when we post it. Put it on their radar so that they can actually start listening to the voice of the boots on the ground in the classroom, so that they can actually start hearing what teachers are saying about the situations they're teaching in, so that when you make these decisions, you can at least, if nothing else, put a face or a voice to the person that you're making these decisions for. And that, like I say, right now, like I say, with everything going on, we're not doing that. You know, everything's supposed to be in the best interest of our kids, and it's not. It's not. You know, I was always taught when you're making decisions for the whole, you first make decisions for the least. And that's where you start making your decisions from. And I don't think we did that. I think we started in the middle ground. Actually, we really probably started at the top, thinking that our kids are digital learners and everybody's going to easily adapt to this, and they're not.
It just, like, Lauren's situation is the epitome of that. that the people at the highest levels expect that they're going to be catered to, and that they are just somehow deserving of everything that they want and everything. It's just like so. And you know what? And it happens everywhere. It's the way the education system was built. It was built. I mean, how long was it before people without meat, like thousands of years, people didn't get education unless they were wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And to see that it's still maybe, I mean, and I don't want to say that it takes place as much, because we are doing way better to serve our underprivileged populations, but that residual effect is still there. And that situation you described, Lauren, is the epitome of it. So, Will, any last questions we want to ask before I would love this to be a more recurring podcast feature of our show. Anything else?
I'm good. I just want to thank you guys for taking the time
Yeah.
again, especially to come together. And we got to make it happen to where we can all get to face
Yes.
once, all the COVID restrictions and everything is released. I know Chicago, y'all went on a lockdown for a while, right? Didn't y'all recently go on a lockdown?
I think that's more Chicago public schools. But I'm not in that realm. I'm in the suburbs.
Okay.
Yeah, I have friends that live downtown Chicago, and basically everything there
is closed. Was closed. Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah. So,
and I think the thing with this too, I've got so much I've got to wrap my head around from what you've said already, that I don't know that I could put any more information in. So for the listeners that want to connect with you, and like I said, the one thing I will say that we got to keep doing is really starting to do, and we talked about this, do some podcasts for parents, do some podcasts that are generally just for kids to talk about these skills. So I know I'll be reaching out to the two of you to kind of workshop what you think that should look like. But for the teachers that want to connect with the two of you, just and maybe get to know you a little better or ask you questions, where's the best place for them to find you?
You can find me. I am at Structured Special Ed on everywhere. Pretty much find me on Instagram though, and stuff like that. And I just want to say thanks for having me on today, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then if you want to find me, Heather, I am full sped ahead. I have a website, Instagram, Facebook, Teachers Pay Teachers page. You can email me, heather@fullspedahead.com.
Awesome. Well, ladies, we hope you enjoy the rest of your break, and we hope to be talking with you again real soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.